All right, hello everyone. I'm filling in as host today for Danny, who's out of town, and it's my pleasure to introduce Sanlyn Buxner. She travels all of the way from the planetary science. We've been at the Planetary Science Institute for many years and is now a senior research scientist and a senior education and communication specialist at PSI. Specializing in engaging the public in astronomy education, public engagement, and working with many partners across the country, including at the University of Arizona. And I wanted to just go through a few of the things that she kind of specializes in. So the Director of Broader Impacts for the Shield Drive Science Center. That's run by Boston University, but UA is a member of that as well. Also, let's see, you lead the program evaluation for the International Observe the Moon Night, which you'll be talking about today, as well as NASA's PUNCH mission, where the C and the H are for Corona and Heliosphere, so a solar mission for that. You're active in science education, research, and you investigate the impact of research experiences for teachers and students, how to engage students in socio-scientific issues for that. And ways to effectively engage youth in STEM education in and out of school settings. You're currently the co-chair of the AAS Education Committee and past education officer of the DPS and lead editor for special issues of the Bulletin of the American Astronomical Society. And I'd just like to comment, I've worked with Sanlyn on a few different things, including at PSI workshops for science educators and resource development. So it was Project Wiser, working with science teachers in Tucson, bringing them in on nights and weekends. And then also at the University of Arizona on Project POEM, which is was an NSF-funded project to develop resources and curriculum for students who are blind in order to teach them astronomy and about the opportunities in science for them. So it was a lot of fun working on that, and I'm looking forward to hearing what she has to say about her work on the International Observe the Moon Night program.
Great. Well, thank you, Steve. It's so nice to be here. I actually worked at LPO when I was a graduate student at the University of Arizona in the early 2000s. I got to work on a couple Mars missions. It was really fun, but it's great to be back. And when I'm talking about International Observe the Moon Night, and I know that you all had an event here on Saturday, which is super awesome. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but I'm also going to talk about the kind of job I have, because it's a little bit different than the kinds of jobs that we often are preparing planetary scientists for. So I'll just talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to have my lovely lots of co-authors and collaborators. Emily's in the room, and it's actually amazing to see so many collaborators of projects that I do in the room. And my email's down there, but you can always get a hold of me. So this is who I am. So I split my time. I do my kind of science, my NASA work, all this work at the Planetary Science Institute. As Steve said, we are a research organization. We are soft money. So one of those places we don't do teaching, we do all research work. I also am part-time in the College of Education here. I am the Director of Graduate Studies for the Department of Teaching, Learning, and Sociocultural Studies. So if you're ever like, oh, I want to see what that's about or take a class, look me up, but we'll talk about that. But I have this kind of like dual role where I have one foot kind of in planetary science and another foot in education. And so I split it, and we'll talk about some of the cool things that affords me to do. Most of my research work is funded by these four organizations. So I do a lot of work funded by the National Science Foundation, both in science and science education. Lots of stuff done by NASA, but then also NIH and the Murdoch Trust. And so again, when you start to get yourself into this science education world, it opens up some really neat ways to be looking at public engagement and different issues. And then I just like to talk about the awesome community work. Also, as you're thinking about, one of the things I didn't know as a graduate student, as an early career professional, is how to be engaged in community work. And I don't mean like community, my community, I mean like our professional community. And no one told me until someone tapped me on the shoulder and said, you know what, you should do something with AGU. And I was like, me? I should do something. And so I like to mention all the stuff that we do, because I want to encourage, especially if you are a student or a postdoc, to know that you have a place in your societies and like they want you right now. Right? So I get to work with the AAS, and Tom Rice from the AAS happens to be here today. If you're interested in education, please chat with him. I was education officer for the Division of Planetary Sciences. Of course, our meeting's coming up. I work as a strand coordinator for the National Association for Research and Science Teaching. I work with the Astronomical Society of the Pacific. If you're interested in getting engaged in education in astronomy, they're a great organization. They have so many great resources. We just had an online conference. They're about whether you want to teach astronomy or you're interested in maybe doing some outreach. They run things like the Night Sky Network, right? Awesome. And then of course the American Geophysical Union, right? So they actually, if you don't know, they have a education section, which can be your secondary section of, right? So anyway, I just like to talk about all the things that I would invite you to become a member of, and I am in leadership of all these, and I would be happy to invite you personally or talk to you about that. Here's some of the projects I get to do. Again, I just like to talk about it. So obviously we have International Observe the Moon Night. We're going to be spending a lot of time talking about that. We have a survey funded project called TREX, where we're doing all sorts of great stuff, but the part that I get to do, which is really fun, is doing public engagement around autonomous rover science. So I get to go out in the field and help make documentaries and collect data and do that. Steve talked about the PUNCH mission, so I get to do a little space physics, a lot of activities for eclipses, but now the eclipse is over, beautiful ways to safely view the sun, work with blind and visually impaired learners. We have a lot of tactiles for that. Do the broader impacts for the Shield Drive Science Center with Joe, who's here. And we have some amazing work, again, for graduate students to support. You don't have to be in space physics. We do coffee chats. We talk about, this week, I'll be doing a coffee chat about individual growth plans. If you want to join us virtually, please let me know. But we talk about a lot of issues about what it's like to be a young scientist and kind of how do we navigate that. We have a great program that's run out of ASU that's called La Space, which is really more for undergraduates learning how to do mission science. So if you have undergraduates, they can be anywhere in the United States at a community college. These are our virtual academies, so they can do that. We have a wonderful program, which I'm hoping to bring here to Tucson in January, called Planetary Reach. This is a SciAct, NASA SciAct funded program that supports folks like us, scientists, to really engage in critical conversations. This one is about how to more effectively engage Black and Latinx youth and their families using evidence-based practices. So I will definitely send out an announcement if we have Planetary Reach come here. And so you can come, you can get a stipend for coming to the workshop. And then we'll have an event at the Boys and Girls Club, which will hopefully get you some more connections if you're engaged. And then the last one, which is called Vertex, which is run out of the Lunar and Planetary Institute. If you work in an extreme environment, like you put on a bunny suit or you go on field work or you do anything that's just kind of, not in front of your computer, we are pairing up scientists like you with Boys and Girls Clubs. And it's not a huge commitment. And so we do have funding from NASA to do this. So we invite you to come and join us in that as well. And you can actually connect with some Boys and Girls Clubs virtually and talk about the work that you do as a scientist. So I actually work on about 20 more projects, but we're going to keep going. And so we'll keep talking about this. But I just want to see all the amazing different things we get to do at this intersection of science and public engagement. And so we're going to be talking about International Observe the Moon Night. How many of you have done it once? Okay, so hopefully I will convince the rest of you that you should try it out. This was started in 2010. It was started by the public engagement lead, Brooke Shue, of the Lunar Reconnaissance Orbiter. They were at Goddard. And they were like, we should celebrate launch. We want to get people really excited. And so it started really small as an event at Goddard that year. And it is now one of NASA's largest outreach programs. And so what I want to talk about is what it is and how do we get from 15 years ago, a small thing at Goddard, to it was on the front page of NASA. It was the very top part of nasa.gov for 2 days, right? So we want to talk about how we got there. And so again, 15 years of public engagement. It is really exciting because this year it was on all 7 continents and the International Space Station. So if you go and look at the NASA feed, there's an astronaut showing you the moon from space. That's really awesome. We've had 150 countries participate, so individuals and groups from 150 countries since it's gone. It is a program that is intending to be easy to implement by anyone, anywhere. And if you did look at the moon and didn't register and you want to be on the map, there is still time the whole week to register, and I'll show you how. So here are some great pictures. One of the things I just love about International Observe the Moon Night is that it is community driven. So there is no prescription of how you need to engage. It is all about celebrating people's connection to the moon in any way that matters. And so it could be looking at the moon, talking about the moon, writing stories about the moon, having art contests. And we have found that this really resonates with people, and they're really jazzed about having it. You don't need a telescope. You actually need no equipment to do this. And you can do it in so many different ways. One of the things I think that's really important, and of course, as the program evaluator, is you got to have goals. And so as you're thinking about how do I plan a program, and then more importantly, how do I know if that program is doing what I hope? You have to know what your target is. Very much like when you are teaching, what are the outcomes that you want? And so these have been vetted and revised by the International Observe the Moon Night Coordinating Committee, but the really big thing for them is they want to unite people, right? So they want to unite people across the globe in this celebration, and they want to, right, so all these bulleted things, they want to raise awareness, empower people, facilitate sharing, inspired continued observation, and support people who are interested. And so these are the lists of their goals, but it's a really nice example of something that I can come in as the evaluator and go, let's figure out if that happened. Let's do what we call assessment, right, in the education world, to go, how are we going to know we met our target for this? Just to let you know, already thinking for next year, it always happens around when the moon is about a quarter. It's always in September or October during that really dangerous government shutdown date. That's what always happens. You want to be on either side of that. But of course, we want to be able to see the Terminator and get to see different features on the moon and make it early enough that, you know, people actually want to see it if you have little kids. If you went out, as Steve went out, it was a little bit later this year, so we did have a gibbous moon, but this was the phase this year. But they always try and do it not full. People always ask why, right? So we're actually trying to get to see all sorts of features on the moon. Now, it does happen on September 14th this year, but there's a date. We have done actually some testing around this. We found that Saturday seems to work the best. They try and avoid religious holidays. That's kind of important. They try and avoid national holidays. That's almost impossible when you're doing a worldwide thing. You are always going to trample on somebody's holiday or religious experience, and you just kind of keep moving through. The flexibility of this that we'll talk about is you don't have to celebrate it on that day. You can celebrate it in the weeks around it and still register your participation. And so when we talk about a flexible program, you can register a week before, a week after, right? Very flexible, and you can enact it in any way that is meaningful to your community. So you can give talks, you can have planetarium shows. Like I said, we've done art contests, lectures, and so it's really supposed to be driven by the community so that they can decide how they want to celebrate the moon and how they want to make meaning. I just crunched these last night, so if you get on the website, it may not be perfect because we pull data and I crunch it. But as of the time I pulled data, this year, which is now record-breaking, there were 6,152 registrations. That means that some human had to go into the website and actually register some kind of participation. That is between events and what we call household registrations, but that's a lot of people to get onto the website to do that. And again, we do have registrations from all 7 continents. And as of, again, last night, we have documentation of about 750,000 participants. And that's a fairly complex thing when we're looking at registrations and what people are telling us who's coming. Looking at social media, looking at things like that. So that's just fresh, and that'll change. I'll do a roll up for headquarters tomorrow, and then we'll do something at the end of the week, and we'll get something done. But the reason I like to show this is it's part of the strategy, which is having this kind of one-page document that talks about impact, because you want to have something out really fast. So I could wait till the end of the month to do it, but it's much more impactful to say the next day, this is what we have going on. This is our impact. All right, so when you go to the website, there are tons and tons and tons of things there. So there's programmatic information, how to host, how to participate, and resources. In the upper right-hand corner, you'll see the red button up there. Just in case you want to register now, you can go right to that registration and still still get yourself going. There are a lot of program supporters. And again, these have been built up over time through relationships. So you can see lots and lots and lots of these. And so it's one of those things where they keep building and building and building, and they get more people who are really excited, building out people and organizations from all over the world. So you too can be a program supporter. Yes, here's if you want to register. And so on the website, there are a lot of what we call like these multimedia assets and different pieces that we're going to talk about. But there are things like FAQs. We'll talk about the code of conduct, the registration, and these really easy guides of how to host, finding a partner, how do you observe? Because you have to basically meet a huge audience, right? So this organizational website and this organization is trying to meet lots and lots and lots of different needs. So it's fairly complex. It's not just a website that gets put up. There's the registration there in the upper right. We can talk about. Here is a screenshot from today. This kind of shows you, in a very funny way, it shows you the distribution of where these happen kind of all over the world. And so you'll see, right, you got lots going on in the US. We have lots going on across all these different countries. And again, this year we had 116 countries so far give registration. We got these nice map. And so these are the types of, like, this is an example of the types of assets that they have to really just simple ways to get people to raise awareness, right? So they have the tagline, right? They worked really hard on, but the tagline for International Observe the Moon Night is everyone, everywhere, every year. And they've done a really nice job of communicating all the things they want in a really simple tagline with this beautiful poster. This was made by Tyler Norgren. Do you guys know who Tyler is? Oh my gosh. Okay, so I should just not do this, but Tyler is this fabulous, he's also an astronomer. He was the one who did all the posters for the eclipses. He does national park posters. If you go to a national park and you see a poster in this style, Tyler made it. And so, right, and he's one of all of us. He's a great, but it's the same. So they reached out and actually commissioned Tyler to make a poster for this event. So it's a really lovely way to kind of do it. And it's for people who know, it's a style they understand, it's a tagline. And then the other thing is, if you're interested, once you buy the rights or pay him, you get to sell it. So it's really cool. So what we want to talk about, this was the screenshot from Saturday, is that International Observe the Moon Night managed to be the top spot on NASA.gov that day. Right, it was super awesome. I don't know, Emily, has that ever happened before?
Not as far as I know.
It was the first year. It was either the first or second. So I was so thrilled that they got the very top spots for NASA for 2 days. And that's just really an extraordinary thing to be able to get the attention of the folks that matter. And just kind of talking about how they're building all this momentum. So I'm going to show you a little bit of data to this point. This actually was made by Emily, this map. One of the things we found in this year, this is not updated, but it was 116 countries. So we're looking at where all the registrations are coming from, all 50 states in the US, the District of Columbia, Guam, and Puerto Rico. And so we kind of look at how the program is kind of taking over very slowly, country by country through the world. The other thing we started to take a look at is the growth, and this slide is not my slide. We're gonna just pretend like that was the slide. You can see it overwrote itself, I apologize. Oh, there we go, okay, perfect. So in September 18th of 2010, it started with 621 little events, right? It was a really sweet little thing, and it kind of stayed really, really, really kind of stable till about, right? Till about 2018. So it was kind of in the hundreds, chugging along, doing really nice. But right around 2018, right, that's when it started to get big. And then it started to get really big, right, to where we are here in our 6,000. And so one of the things that they started to do, right, as we collected data, is we started to go, well, we had a lot of events in 2018. And then Andrea Jones said, I want to see if people want to register as an individual. Lots of people were really excited to register as an individual. And you can start to see that go up and up and up each year. And so that's one of the things they started to do, is say, you don't have to be at an event because people are going, well, I want to register. I'm not at an event. Can I register? And it seems super simple to us, but it really was validated that people wanted to be able to register their participation and see their little dot on the map when they were registering to be an observer. The other thing that we started to see in the data is we started to see kind of what we consider to be the estimated number of visitors to events. And again, it's a fairly complex way we calculate, but you can look at, right, in 2010, at just a couple 500 events, right, maybe 50,000 people. And it was going along. And then again, we start to see this huge increase, right? 2018, all the way up here. And I kind of stopped at 2020 because now we're kind of right there at about 1 million people a year, right? And a lot of this, again, is based on what we are hearing from people, what they are reporting and doing projections from registration. But there are some certain things that are certainly having huge increases for the program. One of the most important things they would say, right, I work with them a lot, is that they actually do a lot of assessment work. They do surveys. They do 2 really short surveys. This is an example of one. This is what we call the Lunar Observer Survey, and they just ask people, hey, how was your event? And so this gives us really important information because we're able to go back to NASA and say things like, this increased people's actual engagement and interest in the moon. Really short, little pithy things that we're able to go back to headquarters and say, this really helped us. We also give a host survey. That is primarily to find out how people's events are, but also to know what can we change to make things better, right? And so it tells us really important things, right? Like, how do they hear about it? So we know where to put our efforts, right? If we know that there is nobody using social media, we're not going to put any money into social media, right? Or if no one is looking at your website, why do we put money into the website? Or how do we get more people to look at it? It also tells us things like, what do they think of all those resources that you put in? And so by far and large, right, we know every year, this is from last year, that the moon map is the #1 most important thing we do. So we're going to ask Brian Day to get the moon map going. It's really important. But we're trying to make evidence-based decisions because for many of us, we have very limited resources when we are trying to decide what to do. So we're trying to make evidence-based decisions by surveying, right, a couple hundred people who are willing to tell us about it to be able to serve people's needs better. Here's one more. This is a question where we ask about hosts. So if you host, and Steve can fill this out, it basically tells us, right, what are the types of reasons why do you actually want to do this? Do you want to get people excited about the moon? Do you want to bring people in who've never been to your institution? Do you just want to let people come and eat? It doesn't matter, right? And so it again helps you decide what is it that you want to do and what kinds of resources can International Observe the Moon Night give to support hosts in doing this work. So what I want to spend the last little bit is just talking about what have they done with this information. So we've gathered this information over 15 years. What have they done? And one of the things is they've expanded in a very targeted way the kinds of resources that they have. And again, this is all based on what we're hearing. What works well? What do we not need? What do we use a lot? One of the #1 most important thing is the moon map. The moon map is produced again every year. It is northern and southern hemisphere, and it is a dynamic PDF that people can print out and use. You don't have to be an expert, you can use this moon map, so get it every year. The other thing that is new is they have a moon map for every day. And so this is a dynamic part of the website, and you can go on there right now and just take a look, but really trying to get people engaged in looking at the moon and helping them map out features. So that was something they rolled out about a year ago. Okay. Many people have used a lunar observation journal, right? Lots of us use it in our classes, but they have one that's branded. When the eclipses came around, they made one to go with the eclipse so that it was a very simple twist on it. But then they could go to a classroom or a museum and say, hey, let's look at it before or after the eclipse. So it was a really nice way to tether themselves to an existing event. Right? They have great activities. They didn't make these activities. They don't curate them. They just, well, they do curate them. I shouldn't say that. They don't make them. They take them from partners and they curate really good activities. So somebody can go straight to the website and have a one-stop shop and go, I need a crater activity. I need another activity. One of my very favorite things is they partnered with the Astronomical League to do an observing challenge. So cool, because if you are such an amateur, you get to have that piece, right? That extra little piece that you get to have. And so you again, get to complete the challenge and get what you want from the astronomical week. So they are doing a really nice job of getting into the amateur astronomy community. Right? Lots of feedback. We need materials in other languages. This, if anyone's worked in this, is a very expensive thing to do. But they've been able to get a lot of the advertising material. So this is the save the date card in all these different languages, and they get more every year and they post them. And so now this is part of what they are working on, is posting all of these materials, the high value materials, as it were, in multiple languages. One of the things that I loved this year, they upped their game on the live streams. Live streams are hard. They can be expensive. They did do a NASA live stream. Of course, it was recorded ahead of time, but they put it out that day. I'll show you a couple things. I was really excited about it, but this we have shown, it's pretty time intensive and resource intensive to make this hour-long video, but people really like it. They're able to look at it at home. They're able to use it at their planetarium. You can go back and see it on YouTube. It's pretty fun. The thing that I loved that they added is they had live streams from observatories in all these different countries. So some people narrated, some people did Q&A, but that way you're starting to engage partners from around the world in a fairly easy way, in something they already want to do, but you're going to commit to putting their live stream on your website. Here are some of the pictures from the live stream. So it's kind of fun. So there's Andrea and her host. They had wonderful pictures from people all over the world. But of course, like I said, I was just so excited and happy that they had an astronaut on the ISS talking about it. So they actually were able to engage people in that way. And so you're going to ask, how did they do that? And the answer is through relationship building. So Molly Wasser, who had been the kind of program director, she worked on that. She worked her things at NASA. She worked that relationship for a long time to be able to get that ask in. But it made a difference. Other things that they have built up over time that have made this really impactful. Number one, they have a searchable database on their website. So if you want to put in your event, you put it in here, and then they advertise a lot that you can go in and find an event. Right? So when you go and register on the back end, somebody can find your public event and link you right to where it is. So I say, I live in Tucson. Oh, I'm going to come to Flandreau. And it's a really nice one-stop shop. You're not having to advertise by yourself. You can put out a huge public press release, and then they go to the website and find your event. So it's actually a very effective way for people to find events. You can put virtual events on it. But yeah, the lesson learned is it's a really nice integrated piece. They also have resources about how do you do this. So we already talked about they have FAQs, but they started telling stories. They had amazing people who hosted some for 15 years straight. It's crazy, but they have featured observers. And so the featured observers are talking about what they're doing, what they do well, their lessons learned. And so it's a really nice way, again, to engage people who have been a part of this whole event for a long time in sharing their knowledge and building out community. They do a really simple certificate of participation, right? So here's mine, very excited this year. Here's my certificate. You too can have it. It's a really simple fill-in form, but you can print it out and let kids fill in their own name, or you can do it online. But it's a really nice way to engage museums who want to send this, or schools that want to do it. And again, a really simple thing. This is one of the next most impactful things that people say they use when they're at a museum, a school, or a library. It's really important to them. They have a Flickr site, right? How do you get pictures from stuff? Tell people you're going to put it on your website and show how awesome they are. So they engage people by saying, we're going to show off your awesome pictures on Flickr. And so people go ahead and dump their pictures, they annotate them, it's great. And so now they have tons of pictures to put on that brochure they want to put out, or to highlight their website, or to give this presentation. Right? And it's, again, very little work to go, you're on our Flickr page, we're going to highlight. And the most important thing, of course, is making sure that you give each of these individuals attribution for their pictures. But it kind of runs itself at this point. Right? And then what do they do on the other side? They have some host webinars. So again, this is run through the Night Sky Network, through the Astronomical Society of the Pacific, but people come to rely on this. Very short webinar that you do to support hosts. one of the most important part of this is not what the International Observe the Moon Night folks say, it's actually what the hosts are saying to each other, right? You can put up anything you want, but what's really impactful is that the hosts are now built into this community. They go, I did this last year, this is what I learned. And so really building community to make sure that folks can learn from other people like that. A couple years ago, they did put in a code of conduct, which is on its website. And so this is really talking about kind of hate speech and making sure that everything that is put up, especially since it's a NASA website, is respectful. And that includes all social media and things like that, and that it is enacted. And so that makes them feel like, and they can, getting rid of comments you don't want, because that is one of the things that you get really nervous about when you have Flickr pages and moderated social media and things like that. So I do encourage something like this as well. And I'm going to end on that. Like I said, other examples of kind of just social media assets, things that have made this really successful. They have a Find a Partner page, a newsletter, Flickr, and just a really easy right there, moon.nasa.gov. And so they built over 15 years this very seamless piece that was not seamless all the time, but now I think it's a really great example of something that has a really high impact, that's high visibility, that I kind of point people to if they're looking at like, how could I do this kind of work? Maybe even on a smaller scale. Okay, so with that, I will stop talking. We can talk about anything you want, so.
So you showed some great survey results that helped you narrow in on things that were particularly high value, a lot of people were engaging with. Were there materials that you were finding took a lot of time to prepare, but weren't getting as much engagement, or maybe were lower utility and were then things that you would decide to potentially jettison next time, or just weren't as valuable?
So yes, so it's not that anything got rid of, it's that people stopped putting effort into curating new ones. One of the things that is people ask a lot for are things that are translated, but they're very niche. So like, I need a whole press release translated into Mandarin. Can we do that? And the answer is it's too expensive for the 4 people who asked for it for us to say that's a priority. And so yeah, there were things that, you know, were there kind of tacitly, but we didn't put a lot of impact in. Again, like, one of the things, when you guys, if you've ever done surveys like this, you'll say the number 2 things we still get, which are impossible, are I want NASA stickers to hand out, and we want t-shirts, and we want telescopes. And so those are 3 things that we kind of are like, those cannot be dealt with. And so we kind of just have to say really, really sorry about that. But what they did put, so instead of saying we can put out stickers, they put out logos that can be turned into stickers, and they're kind of working with that. One of the weird things about NASA is they can't recommend a vendor. So you have to read between the lines and go, oh, I could turn that into a sticker with my own vendor. But yeah, so there certainly were things that kind of fell off the radar later.
Then a related question is, were there things that you thought would be straightforward or easy with regards to materials or technology that turned out to be a big challenge?
That's an interesting question, Emily. I'm trying to think if there's anything that.
Always the translation thing.
The translation, I will say the other thing that was silly, while we're recording, but it's okay, is, you know, they use a vendor for the registration, and sometimes there are glitches. And so my number 1 advice to you is like, don't wait till the day you need that data to pull it. Like, pull it on the 2nd day when 4 people have done it, because we have had times with the vendors where we pulled it and the data you wanted wasn't there, and that's just kind of very normal.
So you had a list of the goals for the program, and I don't know if you had those like ranked by the most important at the top or not, but one of them was like raising awareness of lunar research. I think this is like a NASA goal. Those goals shared with the host, because some of theirs were similar, but others were like, I just want people to have fun.
They are on the website for the entire world. Yeah. So that's my I think that's a really important thing, is like, if you have goals for a program, make them open to the whole world. They're not a secret. Yeah. They're that's actually the first slide of every webinar they do for hosts, and yeah, it's part of the materials, and they're open to not only the hosts, but the visitors as well, to say like, this is our goal for this program.
Yeah, so I was trying to translate, like, Flandreau hosts the one that's here, right? And it may not be that their goal is raising awareness of lunar research, you know, might be just having fun kind of thing. But I don't know if there was any kind of like, can you have something about lunar research in whatever program you're going to put on, even if it's just, you know, some connections to NASA's.
Yeah, but that's the whole point, is you can do anything you want. Like literally, if you just wanted to, again, we've had people do just an art contest, you don't have to do any of it. So that might be the program's goals, but like they're not, no one's feelings are hurt if you're like, we're gonna do a lunar drawing contest. It's like absolutely part of the program. Because the other thing, when you look, I'll go back, is that, you know, when especially Andrea and everyone talks about this, right, they talk about observing very broadly, right? So observing, even though it's observing, can be looking at pictures, looking with your eyes, looking through telescopes, looking in your imagination, and really encouraging people's personal and cultural connections to the moon in whatever that is. And so if looking at the moon is not something that you're into, like, you know, it's like whatever you want to. It could be stories, yeah.
This is dreaded, maybe more of a comment than a question, but I'm just, I was part of the scale model project that came out here, and I, watching your presentation, thinking about the monetary value of all of the graphic design that you've had, and I'm thinking it must be sort of considerable, and I'm wondering, like, for people who have outreach projects, like, when do you go and try and get professional help with that? Do you know of resources that might be available on campus here? And like, can you speak to how much like monetary value went into the production of the graphic design for your?
That is a fantastic question.
Okay.
Like, I think that's one of the most important questions we could ask, is like, I want to do this. So the first thing I'll say is all of these media assets that you see, the logo, they're produced to be used year after year after year. They're not producing brand new things every year. They're like, oh, we're going to produce something we can lay right, like in Photoshop or something, we're going to lay something else on it. So it's not an investment that they're making all the time. They do have a graphic designer. She is on staff, right? She's with at Goddard, I think. But for other programs I've worked with, right, one of the best resources we have found, and I use right now for one of my projects, is I go over to the College of Art, I think, and I get a graphic design undergrad. And so for one of my large NSF projects, I pay her hourly to do that. And I will say, being at a university and creative, wonderful students, great assets, like at a university. Like NASA's actually hampered a lot by how they can spend money and who they can do. And like, perhaps for a program like yours, using student help is actually really a fun way to do it.
Oh, thank you.
But I couldn't actually put a dollar amount on it. Unfortunately, I don't have access to that, but I will say that once they produce it, like once they paid for Tyler's poster, they did it one time and they just use it over and over and over again.
Right, can thank Sanlyn again